Evening, everyone. Great to have you here on behalf of our Board of Trustees and Dr. Jennifer Panning. It's wonderful to have you here, but we have many people and students online as well, and we welcome them. Before I make my very brief remarks, I think it's appropriate to acknowledge what's happening in Florida today. Our fellow citizens, first of all, but I know there's people in this audience tonight who have relatives there, property there. Equally important, over the years, Northwood has had a number of alumni from Florida, and in fact, on our campus today, we have a number of students from Florida. So our thoughts are with everyone in the state, but in particular, those who are directly connected back to Northwood. I'm going to be very brief. In my remarks, this moment brings me back to, I was about 18 months into my dissertation, and I thought I was going to be very close to the end when my supervisor asked me a very simple question. He said, "Does leadership even matter?" That set me on another 6 months of writing and research, but I knew intuitively what you probably do, and we know leadership does. The difficulty with it is it's sometimes hard to articulate, but we know it when we see it. And so this evening, the fact that we have two iconic leaders kicking off the Leadership Insights, a view from the Helm, is really a wonderful event for Northwood. And to introduce those individuals, I want to just point out that Northwood is a leadership development epicenter. We have our own petri dish, and over the years, we've been extremely proud of what our faculty do in our classes to help prepare the next generation of leaders. And so to give a faculty perspective, I'd like to introduce a multi-award winning professor, Dr. Kristen Greiman. So thank you for being here, everybody.
Thank you, President McDonald. So at Northwood, we develop leaders. We provide opportunities to lead student groups, class projects, and events. Through the years, we have challenged our online, undergraduate, graduate, international students to achieve more, to discover their inner leader, and drive economic and social progress. Each student decides how they want to make a difference, how they want to lead. Some will choose to lead themselves, some will choose to lead a few, and some will choose to lead many. Those developing personal leadership skills may choose to read the OmniQuest book. One of our speakers here tonight cited several of our prior OmniQuest selections in their Lessons in Leadership book. Those who choose to lead a few might try developing their leadership potential, critical thinking skills, and problem-solving abilities through experiential learning activities in their classes. Those who choose to lead many may work towards opening their own business, a leadership role in the auto show, Stafford dinner, fashion show, or other campus groups. Whether you are a student, administrator, community member, alumni, faculty, friend, or staff, tonight you have made the choice to participate virtually or here on campus in our new Leadership Insight series. You choose to participate in this opportunity to develop your potential through action. Just like the gentleman here, we are honored to host today. So thank you for choosing the opportunity to learn about leadership through the wisdom and experiences of the speakers Dr. Stahauer will introduce next. It is my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Dr. Kristen Stahauer. She is Northwood University's Academic Vice President and Provost. She earned her doctorate in International Relations at Northwestern University and has done postgraduate work in higher education at Harvard. Her business career has focused on strategy formulation and implementation. She has worked with large and small organizations, spanning sectors from healthcare, manufacturing, financial services, and nonprofits, both here in the US and internationally. What a wonderful combination for tonight's guests. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Kristen Stahauer.
Well, thank you, Dr. Greiman, and thank you all for joining us this evening, either in person here at the McNair Center or via live streaming. We have a great evening in store as we learn from two world-class leaders we are blessed to have in our community. They happen to be close friends, and a condition of their participation this evening was that they share the stage for our inaugural Leadership Insight series. We are the beneficiaries of your friendship, gentlemen. Thank you. I'd like to briefly introduce our guests, and then we'll get into the question and answer phase. William Stavropoulos is the former CEO and chairman and current chairman emeritus of the board of directors of the Dow Chemical Company. During his tenure and as CEO, Dow Chemical underwent a major transformation, the centerpiece of which was a total restructuring of the company. Under his leadership, Dow's productivity improved, its stock price increased significantly, and the company became less dependent on the sale of commodity chemicals. Bill is also passionate about our community, and to that end is the founder, president, and CEO of the Midland Baseball Foundation, which aims to revitalize our region, support local youth organizations, and promote greater economic and civic prosperity in our region. Northwood has recognized Bill for his accomplishments with the honorary doctorate, our highest academic award, the Outstanding Business Leader Award, and with his wife Linda, who has joined us this evening, he received the Naegeli Distinguished Community Service Award. Please welcome Bill Stavropoulos. And to his right, the stage left, is Terence Moore, and he served as president of the Midland Hospital and then became known as MidMichigan Health System and now called MyMichigan Health for 31 years. His vision and leadership created the foundation that has led to what is recognized as one of the best healthcare systems in the country. Like Bill, Terry is passionate about our community and region, and among his many contributions, he has served as the president of the Great Lakes Bay Regional Alliance. Terry also has very strong ties to Northwood University. He has served on our board of trustees. He's the recipient of our highest academic honor, the honorary doctorate. His business success was recognized with Northwood University's Outstanding Business Leader Award, and Northwood has recognized his contribution to bettering our community through the Naegeli Distinguished Community Service Award. Terry has authored, co-authored, and co-edited 10 books and more than 100 articles, and a monthly career column he authors for the Midland Daily News, a Hearst publication, and something that I know many of us are fans of. We'd also like to recognize your wives, Linda, who's joined us, Carlene, who's unable to be here tonight, who have been important, we know, to your success as well. So let's get started. So we have the unique opportunity for our inaugural Leadership Insight Series event to have the two of you on stage together. It speaks to your friendship and also your mutual respect for each other as leaders. Over the years, what's one thing you've learned from each other?
Want me to go first, Terry?
If you can think of anything.
Terry's been a leader in Midland. The thing I admire most about, I guess there's a couple of things about Terry. One is he took a small community hospital that didn't have that much to offer, and over a period of 30 years, grew it to be a regional powerhouse, and built it so that it now not only serves, you know, the Great Lakes Great region, but also the whole Midwest of Michigan. That's not an easy feat, because when you have a small company and you try to build it to a big one, you got to do a lot yourself. You don't have a lot of help. You work for the Dow Chemical Company, you get a lot of help. But when you're an entrepreneur in an area that's so critical to the lives of all our citizens, that is a monumental achievement, and I always admired Terry for that. I guess the other thing I want to mention about Terry, that he shares his knowledge. You mentioned 10 books, you mentioned numerous articles, but there's also one-on-ones and people that he interacts with, and he shares what he has, and he shares it willingly, and he's very generous with his time and effort. So he's one of the model citizens around here, and I admire him very much.
Thank you, Bill.
The smart thing for me would be to say nothing after that. I really appreciate that. I admire a lot of things about Bill. One of his effectiveness. He is so effective. You got Mike Hayes here and Johnny Bartos who work with him too. If you ask me to name the 5 most effective executives I've ever known, and I've known thousands, Bill Stavropoulos' name would be on there. And let me get something off my chest right now. Dr. David Fry was president here when I was on the board and whatnot. And he was a great guy, great president, great executive. But he taught me, and the only reason I mentioned it, he taught me a word. And the word he taught me was non sequitur, okay? Something that doesn't follow, something that doesn't belong. I'm the non sequitur here tonight. I don't have any business being up here on stage with this guy. My wife saw the little thing that came through the email about this program a week ago, and she said, "How do you feel about being on the stage with Bill Stavropoulos?" I said, "I'll tell you exactly how I feel about it." I said, "I feel like a priest who's just been ordained sitting on the stage with the Pope." I said, that's the way I feel about it. Okay? He has that kind of stature.
Well, actually, you both do, Terry. So. So here's a question in terms of your leadership style and priorities. What traits do you look for when you assemble a leadership team?
I think you want somebody that is going to be compatible and somebody who's a real team player and somebody who has a lot of initiatives and whatnot. I look for people with initiatives. I look for people with a high level of emotional intelligence, can relate well to other kinds of people and do the sorts of things. And I want somebody who's disciplined. You know, there's a number of people here that I know in the audience have great discipline, great leaders and whatnot, but they have all of those traits. There was a book written back at the year 2000, which is probably ancient history for a lot of it. It was about a millionaire's mind, and they went through and outlined the traits of millionaires and whatnot. It talked about discipline. They talked about hard work. You want somebody that's going to work harder than other kind of people. The other thing that stood out about me that I thought in that book was the average grade point was 2.92. So if there's any of you here that aren't hitting the ball over the fence, there's still hope for you.
Yeah, I think when you, first of all, I think how you measure, if you're going to be successful in life, you have to be a team player, I think. Very few people can succeed without being a good teammate and a good team player. So you need somebody who is authentic, who's hardworking, who's willing to give up to gain, who does its share of work, is a contributor to a team, understands the objectives of the team, and is willing to support those objectives. One of the worst things you can have is one team member kind of lagging behind, etc. That's not gonna, that ruins a team. It ruins a clubhouse in baseball or football or whatever. But in business and life, teamwork, how to work together with someone else is so key, because you can't get on in this world without working through people, and therefore teamwork. So that's the kind of individual I look for, is that person who's willing to give up himself and do the share in order to make it really happen.
So thinking about our students, and just to follow on to that, you've probably been in hundreds of interviews.
Mm-hmm.
How do you detect those kind of qualities that you're looking for?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think the interview process has evolved through the years, as you know, from coming into the office, spend 15 minutes with you, and you get a good gut feel, and do psychological tests and writing papers, etc. And there's no foolproof method out there. I think a lot of it goes to your history, your references, how you've done before, your ability to articulate what you're trying to accomplish in life, what you're trying to do, and someone who is willing to roll up his sleeve and work hard, because in the final analysis, if you're not a worker, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
How about you, Terry, in the interview process?
Oh, I agree 100%. And I've made some, it's easy to make mistakes. I mean, you can look at somebody that looks like a god or a goddess on paper, and when you really get them in the workplace and whatnot, turns out they've got some major flaws in them. So it's no matter how much homework you do, it's a little bit of a roll of the dice, and you just can't tell. And like Bill said, you can't. 15-minute interview, and you got to check the references and so on, but still a bit of a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Okay, now we have an interesting question, and some of these questions were formulated by our faculty and students, so this is where they came from. We'd like you to think back to a pivotal moment in your career when you had to make a major decision about the trajectory of your career and or your organization. What did you decide and how did it turn out? And what can our students learn from that?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I pivotal. I can almost name the day. I joined Dow right out of college. I was working in the research laboratory and moved up through research management, etc. And I was with the company about 3 or 4 years. And then Dow decided to form a little business within the Dow Chemical Company, diagnostic products. And it was a testing system for medical offices. So that if you went into see a doctor or general practitioner, he could draw your blood and do a blood test on you. That was the premise of the business. And they were looking for people to be part of that business. So it was like 4 or 5 of us that raised our hands and said it was okay. And the advice I got from everybody, not one person said, go ahead and take it. It was too much risk to your career. It's out of the mainstream of Dow. If it fails, you're going to be, kicked out. You'll be kicked aside. I mean, there was everything that was just laid on me, but it sounded so exciting to me that that's a good opportunity. It's the best thing I've ever did. I spent 7 years in that business. By the way, the business failed miserably. And the reason it failed is because the market moved away from us. We had a great mousetrap, but no one wanted to buy that mousetrap. The market moved to hospitals, the big testing centers. But during that 7 years, I started off in the technical side of the business and I finally ran the business and finally sold the business. But what I learned is marketing, sales, manufacturing, research, how to get along, how to make presentations, how to talk to the board, how to get capital. All those things I had to do. And that was a tremendous learning session. When you're in a big corporation, many times you have a narrow set of responsibilities, so you don't see the marketing side or the sales side or the R&D side. But in this business, I could see everything and learned. And from that business, which failed, I got a promotion to run one of the largest businesses at Dow. So it goes to show you, you take a risk, you learn. People understand what failure, if you fail for good reasons. And it's important that you fail, but you know why you failed and how you can overcome it. That to me was a pivotal point in my life, in my career, at Dow.
What a fascinating way you were able to develop your entrepreneurial skills, sometimes called intrapreneurship within a large corporation.
Absolutely. They gave me that opportunity and they saw that what was happening and what happened, and we explained it, and we said, okay, we better sell that business before it's too late. And we did sell it, but it failed. Yeah, it failed.
And what do you think our students can learn from that?
I think our students, don't be afraid to take a chance on your career. Understand that you're not going to go to the top. That wasn't even in my mind. I just thought this was a good opportunity. And so I think that's what they should take to it. Take a chance on your career, especially when you're younger. And work hard, learn, constantly learn. You got to have a curiosity, because curiosity makes you more interesting, and therefore you're more interesting, so people are more interested in you, and you gain knowledge. So you got to constantly learn inside and outside the company. And it's one of these things that you're always constantly trying to do is learn. And curiosity is a key point of that.
Great takeaway for our students. Mm-hmm. And Terry, how about you? A pivotal moment in your career?
I just want to piggyback on what Bill said. I talked about his effectiveness, whatnot. The other thing I say about him is that he is a learner. Okay? And one of the things that stands out to me is, much I think Linda's chagrin, he bought a farm. after he retired when I didn't know a lot about farming. But he was out there, he was absorbing it. He knew as much about farming after a year as most people know. Okay, so Bill is a learner. Mine, the thing that comes top of mind for me is more in my infancy. It was between my sophomore and my junior year. ROTC was mandatory when I was in undergraduate school. And I came down, you had to make a determination whether you want to go into advanced ROTC. And I remember the major coming down and talking to me about it. He said, you know, you haven't shown a lot of leadership. You got to have to make a decision here in life. You're either going to lead or you're not going to lead. And talk to me about it. And I decided to go into it. And I got really lucky because I committed, and this is really ancient history. I committed in 1963 to go into advanced ROTC. 1964, they instituted the draft. So if you graduated in 1965, and if you didn't have a kid or you didn't have some medical deferment, they had your senior trip planned for you. And it was probably going to be in the jungles of Southeast Asia. So I got lucky in that regard. The thing that I would pass along to the students that I learned, because it's held me in great stead, having been in the military and in my career. One thing I'd pass along to the students is that everything worthwhile is uphill. If you're not struggling and going uphill, and if you're coasting, as Henry Ford says, you're probably going downhill. Everything worthwhile is uphill. Airborne school is more rigorous than your basic training. Ranger school is more rigorous than airborne school, so on. So the struggle and whatnot is really important, that you feel like you're doing it. I don't care how old you are. If you're not doing that kind of thing, you're probably not advancing. You're just coasting. That's what I learned from it.
Great advice. Well, Bill, I thought you might mention coming back to Dow. You retired as CEO, and then they brought you back.
Right.
Could you shed a little light on that?
Yeah.
How you decided to say yes?
Well, you know, the economy was bad. Dow was going through a pretty rough period, and the economy was not helping. So the board of directors decided they needed to make a change, and I got a call if I was willing to come back. They wanted me to come back, and Linda and I had packed our car, and we were driving to Florida the next morning. And so I said, yeah, I think, you know, let me just call Linda. So I had to get permission here. So I called Linda and got to unpack the car in the morning then. And so I said yes, obviously, and that was it. But it was tough coming back. I mean, it was because you had your mind somewhere else, and then you had to come back. But we had such a great team. Again, that's going back to that team. We had such a great team at Dow that it made it easier and became obvious what we had to do as a team, and we executed against that. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I had the advantage of knowing everybody there.
Wonderful, and I'm sure people were thankful for Linda's support of that as well. So we'd love for you to share your perspectives on mentorship and talent development. Have you had mentors? Have you been a mentor? And maybe Terry, you could start us off because we know you've written extensively on that.
Yeah, I have mentors. I have people I look up to. Even some are in this room here, and Bill's certainly one of them. People that you want to emulate, people you want to be around. And I could list off 4 or 5 people that set such a high standard. I think that one of the definitions of a great leader is they inspire you to be better, to do better, and thereby they make you better. That's, to me, kind of a definition of a leader. They inspire you, okay? This guy inspired me. Some of the people here in this audience inspire me and whatnot. So I look to them as mentors. And am I a mentor to somebody? I don't consider myself a mentor, but I am available. Not just because my resume is attached under your seats here and whatnot, but I'm available to help people, and it's really rewarding. There's a chapter in the book, by the way. If you get an opportunity, please. There's a chapter, the 2nd edition of a book that I did. The 3rd edition came out last April. I had some extra copies, so there's a book here that I hope you'll grab before you leave, if you're so inclined. That has 31 chapters in it. Outline some of the things. One of them is about mentors and whatnot. So,
Thank you.
By the way, that's an excellent book, and grab it. I mean, if you can, and it'd be good if the students got a hold of it too. It's a lot of good lessons in it, and it's written in short chapters, so you can just grab one chapter and you don't have to make a career out of the big, thick book. And Terry's good at being brief but to the point, so it's very worthwhile.
Yeah, thank you for your generosity in bringing those to share with the audience. So, Bill, how about you and mentoring those you've mentored, mentors you've had?
I've had a lot of great mentors, really, at work. My biggest mentor is sitting right in the front row over there, but other than her, but my mentors inspired me in many different ways. And one of the ways they did is that they had more confidence in my ability than I did at that time. And they gave me that ability. They gave me opportunity to do the job and making sure that I did it by observing me, coaching me, guiding me, and giving me a lot of confidence. And I think that's what a mentor does, is kind of adjust and gives you confidence to take that next step, because confidence is important in tackling everything. So, you know, a lot of people look at a problem. I remember Linda and I were talking to one of the interns that was here at Dow, and she was a chemical engineer, and she was working in the summer, and she was describing what she learned. And she says one of the things that she learned most was that when given an assignment, she would just hum and haw and do research and kind of take a long time to get to it. And her guys next door would just jump right in. And she said, they had confidence that maybe something would work, you know, where she just took time. So there's a nice balance there of going after it and studying it first. But again, it came back to confidence that you can get the job done. And I think that's one of the things that mentors does, is give you confidence to get the work done.
Sometimes they see more potential in us than we see
Oh,
in
absolutely.
ourselves.
There's no question about that. No question. And I think my mentors, that's for sure.
Great comment. Yeah.
So here's an interesting one. What advice would you give your younger self? It's something that might be a good takeaway for our students.
I guess I would, getting back to that confidence thing, I would say, take those chances, take that step, don't hesitate, take some risk earlier. You can do it. I remember President Carter saying that when he was in Georgia, he was a peanut farmer, and he was active in politics, and he was a very successful naval officer. But what made him run for governor and president is that he met other governors and other presidents, and he goes, hey, they're not that much better than me. You know, I could do that. And I think when you look up at the top of an organization, you think, well, I could never aspire to that. I could never do that. Well, you couldn't do it that day. But if you have confidence, that next step, take it. Don't hold yourself back. I always have a saying that says, show up. And when you show up, show up. That means get there, be there, and make sure that you are taking accountability. And I think that's the important point. So show up.
Great advice for all of us. How about you, Terry? What advice would you give your younger self?
You know, I think it's important that you develop an attitude of gratitude, and not only that you develop it, but that you are really be action-oriented as it relates to it. Is Wally Mayton here by any chance? Wally talked about coming here tonight. Maybe he's watching it on the video or whatnot. Wally Mayton's a good example of that in terms of showing gratitude. I have a way of keeping track of how many cards I send out, congratulatory and thank you notes. Around 200 a year. Wally's probably 1,000. I don't know. Spoke to a bunch of high school graduates up in Gladwin recently, and I gave each one of them, in addition, gave them 5 thank you notes. And I told them, you need to start writing these, and you need to start writing them all the time. The second easiest thing to do, I think, to improve your chances of success are start writing thank you notes and congratulatory notes. And one of the things I regret is early in my life, there were a lot of people, teachers, other kind of people that I should have overtly shown some gratitude towards rather than just passing them like chips in the night or taking advantage of them, or, you know, I don't want to say having a sense of entitlement, but not reaching out and really recognizing these people and thanking them. And if I could give some advice to young people, that's one of the things I'd say to you. You start writing thank you notes and congratulatory notes. And it's for certain, don't ever be asking for somebody for a reference that you haven't somehow thanked along the way. You're going to be asking teachers and other people to provide a reference for you. When I was in the military getting ready to go back to graduate school, I was glad that I'd at least recognized these colonels that were writing letters of reference for me in some way. So all I'm saying, I'm sort of repeating myself, but get out there and start writing thank you notes, start writing congratulatory notes, thank people, and it'll tremendous payoff for you. Tremendous,
Really
payoff.
good.
So, Bill, just to take something that you mentioned and take it a step further, so the confidence and that chasm really there is between maybe somebody in an introductory level position to ultimately being the CEO of one of the largest companies in the world and also one of the best healthcare systems in the country. What was that moment when you thought, wow, this is something I could see myself doing, running the whole show? And Terry, we'd like to have your perspective as well.
Go ahead, Terry.
About running the whole show?
Yeah, being the CEO of the health system.
I don't think.
When did that switch flip for
well,
you?
I can tell you sort of what happened with my predecessor, who I was really great to me. They fired him, and they went outside. They were going to go outside to hire another CEO. They hired the #1 headhunter in the country, a guy named John Witt, who I followed his career and liked John and worked with him afterwards and whatnot. So I sat down with 2 other people in the organization. We put together a management alternative. We said, because we were losing $1 million a year on $17 million in gross revenue. Johnny can maybe remember that. But we're making $17 million a year. We're losing $1 million. And we did that for 2 years. So we put together this proposal, and I was going to be president and debrief, blah, 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 the whole thing. And all we're trying to do is buy some time and get our resumes up to date. All right. So, but the board chair sort of panicked. He thought the 3 of us were going to resign and whatnot. He said, okay, we'll give you 6 months. So they gave us 6 months, and 31 years later, that's how I sort of came into it. I acted God more than anything else, I think. But it wasn't something that I had an avarice, I always wanted to be a CEO at a hospital, but the fact to be able to come here and do this, I mean, this is nirvana. Being here today, this is unbelievable.
I would agree. Bill, how about you?
I think it grows. You know, you say, well, I could do the next job. I could do the next job. I could see myself there. It evolves, and then a lot of your colleagues say, hey, you could do that, and so it's a process, I guess. But you never really think that you're going to be the one guy, the #1 guy. But it eventually kind of comes, and it comes and comes, and then boom, you're there. Most of the time, when you're in a large company, at least, or even a small company, you're right next to the top people, so you can see how they interact, how they do. And then you get little hints and nods and things, and it happens. But there's not one moment. I think it just grows, and when the time comes, you're probably not prepared. So there's a lot of learning on the job. Very few people are ready for the job. So those these months and years is very critical in learning. And this is where getting back to teamwork and learning to lean on the right people, understanding who are the right people, who's going to get it done, especially in those first 2 or 3 years of your leadership. That's where, again, getting back to that whole thing, teamwork, and getting the support of everyone and everybody pointing in the right direction.
And to the point you're making, you don't know until you're there what it's like to be a CEO. How did you achieve work-life balance, or is there such a thing?
Mm-hmm. There is such a thing, but I think that, listen, you make commitments in life. And I think the basis of a happy, successful life, how you defend it, is four commitments, really. Commitment to a set of beliefs and a vision that you have. I think commitment to your family, commitment to your vocation, and a commitment to your community to give back. And if you understand those commitments, you can balance your life around those, so no one gets neglected. It's in this day and age, you know, you just can't do one or the other. You have to do kind of it all. And I think if you're lucky enough to have a supportive wife and family or husband, that really helps. But making those commitments, and once you make those commitments in life and you stick to them, you'd be surprised how it all works out. It does work out. You can balance it.
They kind of feed each other too,
Yes,
don't they?
right. We had the same belief. We had this vision with family. And be able to departmentalize is important too, so that you don't bring home your troubles. Because there's always something happening in the company, right? Always. You know, always a crisis. Always something. Just don't bring it home. And don't bring your home into the work. So those sort of things are important. And if you have a set of beliefs, that's your foundation.
No, I don't. Bill has a better balance than I do, but he touched on something that's really key, I think, in terms of balance. And that is having a spouse that's really supportive. My wife was a critical care nurse. She worked the whole time, or most of the time I worked. That worked out for us, you know. But I can tell you from history and other people who know this couple, and Linda's right alongside them all the time, and they used to do so much out in the community. I remember Bill telling me one time after the 7th night in a row he was out doing something, he said, I feel like a zombie out here. But Linda's right there with him. Okay, so having Linda, as he's already pointed out, that's the balance right there. If you got a spouse like that, that's what gives it balance. That's what keeps him balanced, keeps me balanced.
So taking that one step further, what's one thing you've learned from Carlene, and what's one thing you've learned from Linda?
Don't touch remote control on the TV when you come home. That's what I learned. I come home at night, and she retired before I did. I got to tell you this quick story. So the TV's on, and well, what's she watching? She watching Dr. Phil, okay? And after a while, I actually got to liking Dr. Phil, watching him on there. And one night, he said something that I thought was so profound, that it was so simplistic, but it was so profound. He said, if you want to be different, you got to do something different. And that's what I remember about Dr. Phil one night. And boy, that's true. You know, if you want to be different, most of us do, you got to do something different. So the bottom line is, when I give in my presentations about this book, whatnot, is, what are you going to do different? Because if you're not going to do anything different, I've just wasted your time. What are you going to do different?
Yeah, I guess that's good advice. Don't touch that remote when you
You learned that too, didn't you?
I learned that too.
Yeah.
I think gratitude, balance, those two
Wonderful.
things.
Question we remember.
Oh, I think good husband, father, someone who's contributed to the company, left it better than I found it. That'd be good enough.
I don't know. Somebody who cared about the people they worked with. I think that's what I'd like to be remembered. Could I have done better at that? Yeah, but that's what I'd like to be remembered as. Do you know something we don't? Have we? I mean, I'm looking. I noticed two vultures circling over the building when I came in tonight. And it occurred to me that, you know, maybe they knew something.
Now we have some time to take questions from the audience, both live streaming. Microphone over here for anybody who'd like to ask a question of these gentlemen. Where it could get very interesting.
It gets, yes.
Could you please go up to the microphone, Dr. Madchek?
Know that you've done so much for the community, and I think both of you are motivated in part because attracting the best employees to the community, you need community itself as well as a company. I would just ask you tell a little bit about how your company or how your leadership changed Midland during your tenure. What initiatives did you take? How did those work out?
Well, I think if you want to go back to baseball, I guess bringing a minor league team here and building a ballpark, a first-class ballpark, and being affiliated with the Dodgers. This is the 15th anniversary of it. But when I was retiring, leaving Dow, Dow was always interested in how they can improve the community that we live in, for reasons that make citizens better and more to do, and their children and their family, and to attract new people. So we came up with the idea of baseball, and maybe minor league baseball, that could be a foundation for other expansion of other development. So through the generosity of Dow and a lot of people who worked at Dow, and a couple of people right here in the audience were part of that whole team that got together and said, okay, let's build a ballpark, let's build it in a year, and let's buy a team. And the foundations, the Dow Foundation, the Gerstacker Foundation, Strosacker Foundation, and the Dow Chemical Foundation all kicked in, and we were able to get it because they bought into the vision of this could spark economic development in Midland and the surrounding area. And that's how it all came about. It came about as how can Dow and all of us contribute to the community through baseball. And as a consequently, you've gotten new development downtown and other developments that are helping the community. But again, we live in a unique place where we have these foundations, and we have a great company like Dow here who wants to see this be a better community, and they were willing to put their treasure against it. So it was really an easy sell, quite frankly, because they saw that this could help the Midland community, and they were 100% behind it. Terry's on the board. Mike's here. John Bartos. John was part of the manufacturing people who built this facility within 1 year. No one thought it would take, everybody said it would take at least 2 years, and these guys did it in one.
It was almost a singular achievement that he did. He's modest about it here, but and I didn't have any singular achievement. I think though our team, the people that, one of the things we did to benefit the community is we did form a system. We realized that Midland can't sustain the kind of medical specialists that you need. You need to be a referral area, and so we acquired a couple of other hospitals and did some other things. We did joint ventures with Bay City, a lot of joint ventures with Bay City. We did joint ventures with St. Mary's. We did joint ventures with Covenant and whatnot in order to bring the technology, PET scanners, MRIs, gas scanners, other kinds of equipment here. That's what I think we brought to Midland. So now you have some specialty services you wouldn't have otherwise. Thank you for your question.
Any other questions here in the room?
Both of you gentlemen have seen a lot of leaders over the years. You've seen a lot of very successful leaders. You've also seen leaders that have failed. What are the pitfalls and what are the things to avoid when you're put in a position of leadership to make sure that you don't others do that cause them to fail?
Yeah, it's a good question. Let's talk about CEO first. I think people get this CEO-itis. It's a disease that a lot of CEOs get, and it's a disease that says, I know everything, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you, so this is what you're going to do. So they don't listen. They don't understand the business thoroughly. They don't take the time. They get distracted with outside activities, because as a CEO, you're always being wined, dined, and flattered, etc. And you start believing in your own press. And you start saying, well, boy, I'm really great. And they mix their life up with being a CEO. So that's one. And I think the other point is just generally in people working is not listening, not learning, and not being a good teammate. I think those are the factors that really, really halt careers. And they're maybe looking for the next step, or they're not, and because therefore they don't share information, etc. That's the sort of person that's not going to succeed and failure. Those to me are the pitfalls: listening, understanding your people, and then teamwork, because you can't do it alone. And don't believe your own press at any level.
Very good advice.
No, Bill, I think Bill's spot on with that. I think, people need to understand that leadership is about being of service to other people, not being served, okay? I remember they fired an administrator in an area of a hospital. I said to the board chairman, I said, what happened to him? I said, he'd been there 26 years. And he fired me. He said he became more interested in being attended to than being attentive. That's what he said. And that's what we're talking about here, okay? I mean, the really good leaders go home at night, they just stagger out because they've given themselves away. The other ones that Bill made reference to, they think they can be as effective at the course club or condo as they can be where the workplace is, and being of service to the people that work with them and whatnot. Big mistake. Big mistake.
Other questions here in the room? Yes?
One of my fellow students and I will be graduating soon, entering into a little trouble. And I know that can cause struggles, but that can also cause opportunities. What's some advice you could give for becoming a leader in the future economy?
Well, I think first of all, you mentioned getting that first job, and sometimes that's the most difficult job you're ever going to get. And I think that it's important that you don't get discouraged.
Yeah.
Gotta have, you're going to get a lot of no's, and so don't get discouraged. Number one, and number two is, in this world that changes rapidly, knowledge changes rapidly, avenues of acquiring that knowledge change rapidly and are varied. It's critically important that you stay on top of things, not in your job, but what's happening around you, and that you continue to learn. Be a learner. That means reading. That means listening. That means being involved, understanding what's happening around your world. All those things make you a more rounded person, and therefore a better contributor. Because by having a broad background, you're able to make decisions better. You're able to make suggestions better for your company, for your work group. And that's the important thing, is you go in, learn, do, show up, etc. Those are things that's going to help your career. And never get discouraged, because you can always plow through that. That's why you need a motivator, or somebody who could help you, who will get you over those rough spots, because we all go through those rough spots. But you just keep that in mind, and you'll be a success, however you define it.
That's all great. That's all great advice. The bottom line is you got to understand what business you're in. I ask this to people that say, well, I'm in the healthcare business or I'm in the insurance business. No. The business you're in is improving yourself. If you're doing that, if you're out there in the workaday world, don't get discouraged. Your first job's not going to be your into your career. I'd be embarrassed to tell you what I did when I graduated from college, waiting to go in the Army. All right. So don't get discouraged. Just understand you're in the business of improving yourself. If you're working, if you're doing the kinds of things Bill said, you're out there learning, whatnot. Careers are a race of many laps. So you may not be ahead one stage of your career, but you just hang in there and eventually you will be.
Here's an interesting question from online. What leadership mistake in your career taught you the most about leadership?
Don't you go first, Terry? Give me time to think on that one.
Yeah, it's hard to pick out just one. Look, I can tell you one thing. One of the keys to leadership wasn't a thing I can tell you about a mistake that I made. I think Johnny's probably aware of it. Stupid mistake I made by getting into. I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway, the mistake that I made was I got into a business that I didn't really understand, and you learn. We're doing one thing project after another, and everything's successful. When you have something that fails, after a while, it changes your perspective a little bit. Okay, you tend to get more conservative. You tend to think things through a lot better. And I'd be the first to tell you at the end of my career, I got too conservative. I was too conservative. So you learn from failure. Bill was talking about failure. Unfortunately, he didn't let it derail him and whatnot, but failure can really slow you down. I used to have one of the things I had in my office was happiness. Real happiness is being in the attack. Right? Now, we got that from the Army. Well, you find out that if you have some failures, it's not all happiness being in the attack. All right? So I learned from failure.
I think the thing that I learned most is communication. That didn't communicate properly, thoroughly. When you're trying to move an organization radically, or changing a team, or moving a strategy, don't get out ahead of your team here. And I think several times I recall very vividly that I didn't communicate properly. So when you don't communicate properly, you don't get buy-in. People say, what's in it for me? What were you trying to accomplish? And so you have stragglers, and you're out in front, and you wonder why you got slow change. And a lot of times you get slow change is because you're not communicating. You're not communicating clearly about the vision and what you're trying to accomplish and what's in it for each individual person. That's very important in any organizational structure, is what's in it for me, answer that question, and what's in it for the company, what's in it for society, etc. And that takes a lot of communication. And if you don't communicate well, or thoroughly, or clearly, then I think you get slow change and you get disruptions. And I think I've seen points in my career where that happened.
You were certainly doing that on a massive scale globally.
Right.
Other questions in the room? We have another one. How did your parents influence your career?
My parents were, particularly my dad, was really supportive. Bill was talking about people treating you better than you really are. My dad was always looking for the good in me, all right, which he had a hard time finding lots of times. But they were really a stabilizing force. Did a book one time, and I interviewed 9 really successful healthcare executives, and every one of them went back and talked about the role that their parents had in terms of their careers, having really supportive parents, nurturing parents, and whatnot. So I just tell you, it was everything. And in retrospect, that they would. My dad particularly, I think my mother didn't. She started giving up on me. But my parents were really supportive. I mean, I don't know where I'd be with it. I wouldn't be anywhere without them. Period.
Yeah, I think my mother and father. My father came over from Greece when he was 16. No education, no money, nothing, and he worked in in restaurant, ice cream business, etc., candy business, and he opened up a eatery and ice cream shop in a small town out in the end of the island where there was no other immigrants or Greeks. I don't know how he got out there, but he did. And he kind of ran that, and he went back to Greece and married my mother. And they came over and started a family. But what I learned from them is hard work, generosity, honesty, modesty, but hard work, and making things possible for me. So that was a great example of my father being a self-taught businessman, and I learned a lot about business in that little restaurant there, and candy store and ice cream store. Because the principles are all the same. So they were role models in that sense, that the whole family worked, and we lived upstairs, so we were never far away from it. But that's the immigrant story, and it's the immigrant story that's being played out today, and it will be played out 10 years from now and forever. So hard work and being a good citizen.
Good lessons. Any other questions in the room? We have another one from online about the importance of ethical leadership. We just have a few more moments, but could you each speak to that?
Yeah, I think authenticity is key. If people see through you, they understand you. So you have to be authentic. You have to be yourself. And integrity is part and parcel of that. If you're don't have integrity, if your company doesn't have integrity built into their culture, it's a cultural thing. They do instinctively they know what the right thing to do is. We've had many examples. I can tell you that people came back and said we were doing some big deals, and we were proposed to shave corners here and shave corners there, and our people just refuse it. They didn't have to go back and ask. So it's built into you, and it's critical that you're authentic, you're honest, you're fair, you see the other side of the story, so that way you can make deals, do operations effectively, as through an honest, integral integrity. That those words are part and parcel of everything you do. That's the foundation.
The bedrock.
I agree. That book that I made reference to earlier on, the one from 2000, The Mind of a Millionaire, or The Millionaire's Mind, whatever it was. Number one, the one thing they talk about, honesty and integrity in all your dealings with people, what Bill just said. And so that really is important. It's a foundation for everything else.
Well, I hate to say it, but our time is up for the fireside chat, and this has just been such a rich conversation, and we are blessed to have you share your wisdom, and blessed to have had your leadership shape this wonderful community. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
A student's perspective, Cole Briggs, who's one of our student leaders, and he is going to wrap things up for us. He's a senior, double majoring in operations and supply chain management as well as finance, and he's from Port Huron, Michigan.
Great.
Thank you, Dr. Sehar, and thank you to Mr. Moore and Mr. Stavropoulos for so generously sharing their wisdom tonight. As I prepare for my career, I have a number of valuable takeaways from this evening I've been taking notes on. From Mr. Moore, I will always remember that when talking about leadership and what is important in leadership, we must have emotional intelligence, very intense self-discipline, and we must learn to take initiative. And that everything is worthwhile when we are working uphill. And also to surround yourself by better people and to be inspired and to be inspiring. From Mr. Stavropoulos, I learned that leadership, when talking about leadership, it is important to be a team player. It is important to sacrifice, especially when you are going from small to big business. And it is very important to be curious. And also, some of the most pivotal moments in our lives are going to be from learning from our failures and from taking risks. And we also must learn to understand others. And from both, what I've learned is that they have, in their journeys of success, they have both been very intense team players. They have learned from their failures, and proper communication is key. Not to mention that my girlfriend will be very appreciative if I learn to not touch the remote. So thank you again for allowing us to benefit from your leadership insights. Gentlemen, to commemorate your serving as our inaugural guest for Northwood University's Leadership Insights, A View from the Helm, we have a gift to show our appreciation for each of you.
Ah, very nice.
If you could stand up,
Yeah.
take a photo.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
Wow.
Terry,
Wow. Look at that.
very nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
I got a place for that.
Yeah. What a nice.
That is wonderful.
Yeah. Come on in here, Cole.
Just
Yeah.
come forward.
Thank you.
Come forward a little
Yeah.
bit.
Take your time. This may be the high point of my career.
Just before you go.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank
Very,
you.
very nice. Wow. Hey, nice job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice talk. Thanks for wrapping it up.
If I could wrap up here,
Come on.
everyone, just very briefly, three things. Number one is Northwood is committed to being Midland's university. A lot of universities dig a deep moat around the university and bring up the drawbridge. We're trying to reverse that trend, and the fact that we have community members here who've given up their time tonight to join us, we're deeply grateful for that. So welcome to our campus. I also want to acknowledge, as these gentlemen would point out, the dirty little secret of being a university president is you simply show up, and all of this work is done ahead of time by my colleagues. So I do want to honor them. A number of people were involved in this, and I thank you, faculty and staff who are here. So many are online tonight. It's a busy time of year, and in particular, our students, a number who are here, and several hundred more watching online with quizzes on this session tomorrow for taking the time. But we had three here tonight who welcomed you. So Aiden, I want to thank you, and Andrew, thank you. Cole, thank you for being here. That's the number one, and that's the longest one. This is going to be a series for us, and we're putting the other pieces together with some exceptional other leaders planning to be with us. There's one that I'll point out, Mr. Chris Clements. He's a CFO. He's a Northwood alumnus, CFO and Executive Vice President of the Miami Dolphins. He oversees the football program, the F1 race, the golf tournament, the Hard Rock Cafe. Chris is going to be coming back with his wife, who we met here on this campus in March, and we have a couple of others booked. So I encourage all of you to come and join us. Maybe the most important is we have some refreshments out there. And I can tell you earlier, as a maritime Canadian, when I went into the office and I was all alone in that office next door, for me to see the second pot of shrimp sitting there all by itself and nobody around, it took all the strength I had not to dig into those. So they're out there with a few other refreshments. Sincerely thank all of you for kicking this series off in such a beautiful way. And Bill and Terry, you're gentlemen, and we are blessed to have you in this community. So thank you. And Kristen, beautiful job again. So our IT team, thank you, gentlemen, hiding in the back. Thank you so much.